Loyal Heights area, also known as East LA. They're neighborhoods in California, and it's a working class community, predominantly Latino. It's been a little bit more gentrified now, but at the time it was mostly Latinos. You spoke Spanish all around. You didn't really have to speak English in the neighborhood, in the different stores or um, schools, anywhere. And our family didn't really take vacations. We couldn't afford to go out, especially outside of the country. So when we took trips, we would go to the beach or we would go see family, perhaps within California, but it wasn't like we were actually traveling for vacations. It's just something that wasn't um, financially an option for our family. But when I moved to Grinnell, Iowa for Grinnell College, that was my first time really seeing the world. And it was because I had access now to a whole new abundance of resources through the school. I was there through a scholarship, a 4-year scholarship. So that allowed me to really travel to this study abroad program in Argentina. And when I was there, I was able to take vacations with some of my peers, and we got to see, a variety of places in Argentina. So with Grinnell College, I found out about the program through this organization called the Posse Foundation. And it was a program that helped find talent in a lot of different schools in the LA district. And since I was a student that had good grades, I was hardworking, some of my teachers recommended that I apply to this. And the Posse Foundation partners with different colleges around the country, and they ultimately provide a network of support for students to not only support them in applying for these colleges, but then they offer mentorship as they immerse themselves in college life for the next years of their career. And they go with peers. So I went with 9 other students from the LA area, and we went into this rural town. Big city kids going into this rural town, many of us for the first time really seeing a whole different set of community. And it was a great experience because we came in having that support. Uh, there was no way I would have known about Grinnell College, where I was from, and the school that I went to. It was a school, it was a liberal arts that was unknown to me. And I knew about it through the Posse program, and I did my own research, and I said, this sounds like a great place, an education of a lifetime. And it didn't hurt that they were also providing this full ride scholarship as well. Yeah, so I learned about study abroad perhaps my first year in college, and I was hearing, students that were on their junior, senior year talking about their great experiences, leaving Grinnell and studying somewhere else for a couple of months. And I was like, I want to do that. That sounds like such a great experience. And I was doing my major in Spanish, and I was in love with the literature. And I said, I want to go to a Latin American country where I can learn a little bit more about, the culture. And I wanted a culture that's different from my own, because I wanted to learn about their different traditions, their different values, because just because we speak the same language doesn't mean that we are all the same. So I wanted to learn a little bit more about those differences. And Argentina was a program that was well established in partnership with Grinnell. And I took advantage of the opportunity. I went with my friend from LA, who's also a Posse student. We went together, and it was memorable. I think for me were the trips, because those vacation trips allowed us to really bond. I went with to these trips with my friends, and when you're in these amazing places and you are together, you have the opportunity to really bond, to share each other's stories, to share each other's oftentimes pain that we miss home, that sickness, that yeah, that sickness that you feel, homesickness, which is so natural, but to share it with people was such a great space to be in. And then to enjoy amazing sceneries that we didn't have access to back home, especially in Grinnell, Iowa. So it was wonderful to really value those precious moments that were short but sweet.
Do it.
Some of them were part of the program, and some of the trips were on our own. So sometimes the girls, we were like, we want to get out of the city. Let's go out, and we booked a hotel and we stayed there a couple nights and we had a blast. Some of them were part of the trip, part of the program, especially the trips that were more historical in context when it came to visiting different communities, indigenous communities out there. So yeah, it was a little bit of mix of both. Yeah, that was a trip that we organized as friends, and it was beautiful. It was so we already had, in the little research that we had been doing while in Buenos Aires, we knew that Iguazu was well known all over the world. It's a beautiful place. So we wanted to take the trip out there, and we went as a couple of us girls. We booked a hotel. We stayed there for a couple of nights, and we wanted to make sure we had different views of the waterfalls because it's immense. It's huge, and you get wet instantly. So we had been doing a little bit of research while in Buenos Aires, and we wanted to take a trip. So we decided that Iguazu was a great place to visit because it is known all over the world, and it's a beautiful place to visit. So we booked a hotel for a couple of days out there, and it was a blast. We did some hiking, we went on a boat, we ate some great food, and we talked to a lot of locals around the communities, and it was just amazing. And to go with friends was such a blast. There's just an amazing electrifying energy to it. I mean, you just see a beautiful scenery, waterfalls that go miles, and you can just feel the breeze and the intensity of the falls, of the water, and it's green. I mean, you're literally within the forest, and it's a beautiful national park, and it was just an amazing experience. I mean, I know Washington has amazing amazing parks here, but there's something quite magical about a place like that, where there's just so much energy.
Later?
Well, for me, I mean, whenever I see waterfalls now, I don't I mean, I appreciate them, but I don't get shocked because there was nothing like that experience, the waterfalls here. And I've seen some, in closer to Pullman area, and I've seen this Laquami one here, and I've seen a couple, and they're beautiful. But to really see miles and miles of waterfalls and just be so close to them, where you literally are wet by the impact of the water coming down, it doesn't compare.
These things for it.
It just makes you feel more appreciative to be, to be able to have a moment like this. I mean, for me, coming from a place where you only see things like this in movies, where for me and my family, going to Santa Monica Beach was a gift, something that we did once in a while because we couldn't afford to drive all the way out there. It was about a 45-minute to an hour drive on a good day. We're talking when there's no traffic in LA. And we did that once in a while, but we valued it so much because it was such a gift for us. It was so rare. And then to be in this place where there's just an abundance of beauty, at my disposal, it was breathtaking. It was magical. It was symbolic to say, wow, this is accessible to me too. An inner city girl. I have access to this beauty too. So it was real a moment of grace, a moment of gratitude. Yes. Especially in the province of Jujuy, Argentina, we were able to meet a couple of different communities, indigenous communities there. It was very humbling, especially because, you know, the history of Argentina and the way it tells its story, its national story, oftentimes puts indigenous people at the margins of those stories. It celebrates this Eurocentric pride in many ways. And to then go out into the outskirts of Buenos Aires and to see that there's still indigenous communities thriving in the midst of systemic erasure was really humbling. And to see that they are a proud people was also, you know, pretty amazing to see. And to see the impact that they continue to still have on the Argentinian people, you know, and they themselves being Argentinian, but to really see them as part of the national fabric, not outside of it, was really important. So I haven't been back. I would love to go back. I would love to go back with my daughter. She's 2 years old, and I would love to take her back to Jujuy and to Iguazu, actually to many of these vacation trips that I took with my friends, because they introduced me to a whole different world. And I was able to dream bigger because I saw this whole new world. So I want my daughter to experience that. I want her to know that she can dream big, that the world is hers. And oftentimes these trips allow us to really get outside of our bubble. And I would love for her to see some of that and experience some of that magic herself. Yes, I am an admin here. I'm the director of admissions and the assistant director, but I'm also a professor. I teach as an adjunct for Washington State University and Macalester College. So I've taught courses for college students, and I'll also be teaching for our Hillside Middle School students on Washington State history. I have a PhD in American Studies, which is why I would be able to teach history. So for the universities, I teach American Studies courses, comparative ethnic studies courses, and gender and women's studies courses as well. As someone that studies and does research on different communities and the ways power operates in the type of access that communities have, I think I'm just a little bit more conscious of how I travel, right? So I don't necessarily encourage it in my classes or curriculum, but what I do encourage is for students to really think about their own positionality when traveling, especially to countries where there is a lot more systemic poverty, where they're going in as tourists, where they're going in as people that carry a certain type of status for being US citizens. And to travel, that passport has a lot of cultural capital and has a lot of economic value all over the world. So don't take that lightly. What does it mean to be a responsible global citizen, right? So those are things that I encourage my students to think about when it comes to traveling to other places outside of the US. I think so. And I think it's because of my own experience as a working class woman of color. You know, moving into Grinnell, Iowa, a very white rural town, as a woman of color from a city, I knew right away that I was an outsider. So as an outsider, coming into a different normative space, I was able to see, hold up, there's things that I don't have access to, or there's things that I feel like I have to prove that I'm worthy of belonging in. And I think that awareness allowed me to be more compassionate and empathetic towards people that don't have that luxury, because I didn't have it. Now I do. And I have to make sure that I'm responsible in the ways that I want to not only educate others about access, but also how I enter those spaces. I don't want to forget where I came from.